Welcome back, class. Yesterday we learned how to find the vertex of a quadratic equation. Today we're going to learn how to use that vertex to help us graph quadratic equations. So there are 4 simple steps to help us graph quadratic equations, and the first step is what we did yesterday, find the vertex. Once you found the vertex, our next step is to create a table of values. Okay, a table of values is simply a table with x values and then y values. So we're going to choose some x values and then find the y values so that we can plot those points. We're going to have a total of 5 points. There's going to be the vertex, that's 1 point, and then we're also going to choose 2 x values that are bigger than our vertex, and we're going to choose 2 x values that are smaller than our vertex. So that's a total of 5 points that we'll plot. Step number 3 will be to plot those 5 points, and then step number 4 will be to connect those 5 points with a parabola or a curve. Alright, so now that we know those steps, let's go through a couple of examples. I'll show you how to do this. Here is an example of a quadratic equation. Okay, I've got my x squared term plus, so I have y equals x squared plus 4x plus 2. Step number 1 is to find my vertex. And remember, to find my vertex, first I need to find my axis of symmetry. Okay, and we remember that formula. That is x equals the opposite of b over 2a. Alright, so I just need to plug in the information that I know. I know that my b is 4, so it's going to be x equals the opposite of 4 all over 2 times a, and my a in this case is 1. So I can reduce that now, or simplify it. Negative 4 over 2 times 1, which is 2. And I end up with x equals negative 4 divided by 2, which is negative 2. Alright, now that I know my x value of my vertex, what I need to do is plug that x value into my original equation to find my y. Y equals negative 2 squared. Remember to put that in parentheses so that your calculator knows what you're talking about. Plus 4 times negative 2 plus 2. The simple way to do that is to just plug this whole thing into your calculator. It will spit out the y value for you. Okay, I'm going to kind of break it up into some different parts. Negative 2 squared, negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4. 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. And then plus 2. So then when I simplify all this out, I get y equals negative 2. So my x value is negative 2 and my y value is negative 2, so my vertex negative 2 comma negative 2. Alright, so that's step number 1, find your vertex. From there we can move on to step number 2. Step number 2 is to fill in a table of values. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my vertex in the center of my table of values. So my x value was negative 2. And my y value was also negative 2. Alright, so it's in the center of my table of values. Now what I need to do is I need to choose 2 x values that are below negative 2 and 2 x values that are above negative 2. So the number right below negative 2 would be negative 3. And then negative 4. And the numbers right above negative 2 would be negative 1. And 0, just like that. Alright, so I have all my x values filled in. Now what I need to do is I need to take this x value and plug it in to my original equation so I can find my y. So just like I did with this original equation, when you type it into your calculator, make sure that you put it in parentheses. Okay? Otherwise your calculator is going to get confused and it's going to give you wrong answers. You have to be smarter than the calculator. You have to know how to type it into the calculator. The calculator can't read your mind. Okay? So when you type in this first one, for example, you're going to type in parentheses, negative 4, parentheses, squared, plus 4, parentheses, negative 4, parentheses, plus 2. And then you can hit enter. When you do that, it's going to spit out an answer for you of 2. When you do the same thing for -3, it gives you an answer of -1. Then when you try -1, plug it in there in your calculator, it gives you an answer of -1. And finally, when you try 0, plug 0 into that original equation, it gives you a y value of 2. All right, so there's step number 2, complete a table of values. Those are my table of values right there. Those are my 5 points. Step number 3 then is to plot those 5 points on a coordinate grid. All right, so I'm going to start with the top one and work my way down. The first point that I'm going to plot is -4, 2. So I'm going to go to the left 4 and then up 2. Next one is -3, -1. So I'm going to go to the left -3 and then down 1. Next one is my vertex, -2, -2. To the left 2, down 2. -1, -1, so I go to the left 1 and down 1. And then finally 0, 2. Over 0, up 2. Alright, so those are my 5 points. The last step in this process is to connect those dots, forming a parabola or a curve. So I'm going to connect these dots. Alright, and your parabola should end up looking something like that. Okay, so in the next couple days we're going to talk exactly why would you want to graph this, what does this graph mean, but for right now what you need to do is you just need to be able to graph this parabola. Alright, so there's one example. Let's try one more example and then I'll cut you loose on a couple of your own. Alright, here's example number 2. Right away when you look at this example, y equals -x squared minus 2x plus 3, I notice that my a is a -1, so I know that this parabola is going to be a frown parabola, an upside down parabola. Okay, so that's good to just know right off the top. Okay, I got to remember this one's going to be upside down. Alright, step number 1 is to find my vertex. This is what we worked on yesterday, and hopefully we're getting pretty good at it. In order to find my vertex, first I have to find my axis of symmetry, or my x value. Okay, and remember that x equals the opposite of b over 2a. So I just need to find my b and then my a up here. When I do that, I get x equals the opposite of b. My b is -2. So I'm going to have the opposite of -2. And then all that over 2 times a. And in this case, my a is -1. Don't forget that negative. It's tricky. Alright? So now when I reduce this or simplify this here, the opposite of -2 is +2. And 2 times -1 is -2. And then 2 divided by -2 is -1. X equals -1. Okay, so there's my x value, -1. Now I need to plug this into my original equation to find my y value. Okay, so I can find my vertex. So I'm just going to rewrite this top equation, except anytime there's an x, instead of x, I'm going to put -1 in parentheses. Y equals -1 squared minus 2 times -1 plus 3. Okay, so the smart thing to do is plug all this into your calculator exactly as it's written here. You need the parentheses, you need every single negative sign. You have to be very, very careful and exact and precise, and you have to attend to that precision. You have to make sure that your answer is exact. Okay, one little mistake. If you forget one little negative sign, if you forget one parentheses, then it's going to throw off your whole answer and you did all this work for nothing. Okay, so attend to precision. Make sure that you're precise. All right, plug it all into your calculator. I'm going to go ahead and kind of break it up without plugging it into my calculator. -1 times -1 is 1, and then negative. And then -2 times -1 is +2. And then plus 3. So when I combine all these, I end up with y equals 4. And so now I know my vertex. My vertex is negative 1, comma 4. That's my vertex. Done with step number 1. I take what I got from step number 1 and I plug it into my table of values. Remember that my vertex should go in the middle of my table of values. Negative 1, comma 4. I'm going to choose two x values below negative 1, like negative 2 and negative 3. Those are two numbers that are smaller than negative 1. Then I'm going to choose two numbers that are larger than negative 1, like 0 and 1. Okay? And now that I know these x values, I'm going to plug them into my equation and find the y values. Okay? So again, you have to be really, really careful. You have to attend to precision. You have to be exact. You need to type out all of this into your calculator. Every little negative sign, every little parenthesis. Okay? Instead of negative 1, we're going to try it with negative 3. This is exactly what you should type into your calculator. Negative, parentheses, negative 3, parentheses, squared, minus 2, parentheses, negative 3, parentheses, plus 3. And when you type all that into your calculator and hit enter, you end up with 0, nothing. All right? Then you do the same thing with negative 2. Plug it into that original equation, put it in your calculator. You end up with a y value of 3. You do the same thing for 0. Plug it in. You end up with 3. And you do the same thing for 1. Plug it in up there. And your calculator will give you a y value of 0. All right. Step number 2 is done. We created our table of values. We've got 5 points for us to plot now. So step number 3 is to plot those 5 points on our coordinate grid. The first one, I have an x value of negative 3, so I'm going to go to the left 3, 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to go up 0. Very good. The next one is negative 2, comma 3, so I'm going to go to the left 2, and then up 3, 1, 2, 3. Excellent. The next one is negative 1, comma 4, so I go to the left 1 and up 4. The next one is 0, comma 3, so I go over 0 and up 3. And then finally the last one is 1, comma 0, so I go to the right 1 and I go up 0. I've plotted my 5 points. I'm ready for the last step. The last step is to connect the dots, forming a parabola or a curve. All right, so my curve will look like this. Okay, or something close to that. Mine's a little lopsided here. It's all right. A little better. All right. So one thing to notice is that this curve does form a frown face. It's an upside down parabola, which makes sense because our original equation had a negative a. And so that would make sense that our parabola is upside down or a frown face. So those are little things that you can check to say, does this make sense? Is this the right answer? And in this case, yeah, it makes sense. So far, so good. All right, so there's 2 examples for you to look at and test yourself on. There's 2 more examples in your notes for you to try. Try those ones. And if you have any questions on them or you need help with those ones, please circle any parts that you are having trouble with, and we can talk about those in class. Thanks for watching, and I hope it comes easy to you. Bye.